You're each going to get 2 minutes as an opening statement. It will be followed by questions by our interviewers. It'll be like a job interview. And you'll get 1 minute to answer their questions. After that, we're going to go on with a 2-minute rebut or readdress of any issue you choose. And we're going to finish up with a 30-second wrap-up, okay? So, let us begin. Mr. Harris, why don't you start us off with your 2-minute opening statement?
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, as you said, my name is Aaron Harris. I am a husband and father of 3 girls over here in the corner. I'm also a former precinct chair, an activist, and the founder and past executive director of Direct Action Texas, and currently the chief staff for our neighboring district, District 5, to our south here. So I currently fly back and forth commuting to D.C., and of course, my wife and my family and I still live in Texas, as we always would. But our country's at a crossroads. I think we all recognize that. All you have to do is turn on the TV and you see we're at a crossroads. We're at a place where our country's going to have to make a real decision on whether we turn this country back to American values, traditional values, and what we as conservatives are trying to conserve is our way of life, centered around the family, centered around the church, centered around the community. Or are we going to allow this country to turn to the left and become another European socialist country? That's one of the reasons I'm running, is because what we need in D.C. is political courage. We have a lot of, maybe not a lot, we have guys in D.C. that vote right. We do. We can probably name some, maybe not use both hands, but we can probably number some off. We have guys that vote right. But what we lack in D.C. are guys with political courage. I built a reputation of political activism and political courage, whether it be when we exposed in the public what voter fraud, when we were ridiculed and attacked by the Democrats, attacked by the Republicans, and we persevered and pushed through and criminalized voter fraud. For those of you who don't know, when I got involved in it, voter fraud was a misdemeanor, maximum $500 fine. Today it's a felony because of our work. Our work has resulted in 10 convictions and 5 ongoing prosecutions. But whether it be in McKinney when they were trying to stop political speech and we went and fought it at risk of arrest and we won in court. Political courage is what we need. The best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. And I have shown political courage, and that's why I'm running.
Travis, give me a minute to interrupt. You may stand up or you may sit down, it's your choice, but do not move.
Do not walk around. You can actually move.
You will get on camera.
That just blows my whole thing. Actually, I was planning on doing an interpretive dance, but sadly, that is out of the question now. So I have to come up with something to say. My name is Travis Ransom. I hail from the second largest Atlanta in the nation, Atlanta, Texas, where I am the mayor. But I'm more than just the mayor. I have committed a lifetime of service to my community and to Northeast Texas. I joined the Army out of high school. I've served for 23 years as a command sergeant major and counterintelligence agent, so I feel like I understand the threat that we face as a nation very well, because I've spent a long time defending the nation from our adversaries. For 11 years, I got the opportunity to work in the Texas State Senate. So I was working for a state senator, getting to learn the legislative process, but really just getting to represent the people and understanding what it's like to be on the other end of the line when you call a legislator. When you're so frustrated that you pick up the phone and you call your state senator or your state representative or you write them a letter. I was the guy that answered the call, that took care of the problem, that made your concerns my own concerns and helped you navigate the bureaucracy that is the state government. And so that was an eye-opener for me. Getting to work in the city of Atlanta as a mayor is great because I get to give back to the community that I call home. I choose to live in Atlanta because it's my home and it is where I want to raise my family. Northeast Texas is a great place to live and raise a family. It's a great place to locate and grow your business. And it's a great place to visit and relax. We get a lot of things right in Northeast Texas. And representatives from Northeast Texas get that. And I think that that's what I bring to Washington if I'm selected to be the nominee for this position. Because Northeast Texans need a rural representative that understands their issues, because I've worked with them for the last decade. So thank you very much, TravisRansom.com.
You can clap.
Oh, they can't.
That's against the rules. No dancing, Jim.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jim Pruitt. I am the mayor of Rockwall, Texas, which is the largest city that's in the 5th congressional, in the CD4. So I want to tell you that why should you choose me? Well, you are the party activist. You're here for one reason, because you got involved. And by gosh, you got involved more than anybody else in this entire district. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. Being the mayor of Rockwall, I'm in the last year of my last term because we have term limits. If we had term limits across this country, we wouldn't have Nancy Pelosi to deal with right now, and a lot of other people. So I believe in term limits. I have, for the last 5 years, we have lowered the tax rate to we call it the no new taxes rate now, or below each and every year of that. Why is that important? Because I have a record. I have a record that that I have voted every single time to lower the taxes on the homeowners. Party work. I've been in this party for so long, I was a Clayton Williams poll watcher, if that tells you something. In South Dallas, I might add. I'm one of the only persons here that I guarantee you that I have sued a Democrat for voter fraud. And that reason being is because we had elections stolen from us. I have been to court with those guys. I've been a lawyer and a judge for 35 years. I want to tell you that I have a passion to go to Washington. Some people say we don't need any more lawyers down there. Well, the last 2 lawyers that have represented this district have been pretty darn good, in Ralph Hall and John Radcliffe. I want to be on the committees in which Radcliffe was on, so I can ask those tough questions. I am pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and I believe one man, one woman.
Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Sue. Hey, good evening, everybody. I am Jason Ross. I'm 46 years old. Last weekend, turned 46. A couple of weeks before that, my wife and I celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary. We met each other at Rockwall High School. We grew up here. We moved back here after college and law school. We raised our own family here. We've grown our business. Our son is 20 years old, almost. He's a sophomore at the University of Arkansas. Our daughter is 17. She's going to hit SIM when I get home tonight on her application to Texas A&M. So I'm particularly excited about that. I want you to know that because that's where my family is right now. We're in a great season in order to be able to serve full-time this congressional district without any risk of moving to Washington. I have no desire to move to Washington. I've been to Washington plenty. Many of you know this. I served for nearly 5 years as the district chief of staff for our Congressman, John Radcliffe. I'm here tonight not because I ever planned to be doing this, but because we have to change our member of Congress on January 3rd. But I'm the only one that keeps us from having to start completely over on January 3rd. I'm running for 3 reasons: loyalty, authenticity, and readiness. Loyalty to this congressional district. I grew up here, raised my family here, have grown my business here, and I am the only one who has directly served this congressional district at the federal congressional level for this congressional district. No one else has that experience. Loyalty to our conservative values, authenticity. I'm not running to be anyone else. I'm Jason Ross. And readiness because of my experience that you'll hear more about tonight. Thank you.
And now we're going to start a round of questioning.
1 minute.
This is 1 1 minute answer.
Yes, 1 minute answers. And we're going to start with Mr. Ransom on this question. And to explain this question, let me just say, I try very hard not to lead the witness. So, this is to gauge what you understand about a particular topic. So, Mr. Ransom, state your position on red flag laws.
Sure. So red flag laws are the laws that we have seen some people push regarding mental health, and really with young people. And the intent was to try to prevent, the mass shooting situations that we've had in our nation. But red flag laws are a dangerous, very dangerous precedent. They set a dangerous precedent. And I am not for red flag laws because you should not identify some child as a student that is a potential danger to society, and then that blight their entire life history. And so the red flag laws, as I understand it, I think it's a very dangerous precedent. So I would be against that.
Mr. Pruitt.
Thank you. I'm really not sure what you mean by red flag laws.
Okay.
So,
That's okay. That's okay. Mr. Harris.
sorry.
I'm against red flag laws. I would have never signed on to Senate Bill 10 last year that every senator in the Texas Senate did. I believe that our rights are inalienable, given to us by our Creator, and that there is no red flag clause in those rights.
Thank you. Mr. Ross.
Thank you. I am also strongly against red flag laws, and we came dangerously close to going all in on red flag laws here in Texas and across the country. I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I venture to say my gun cabinet is as extensive as anybody in this room. And the Second Amendment is not about hunting. It's not about sport shooting. It is about protecting your family, your property, and more importantly than that, protecting us from a tyrannical government. And we cannot allow laws under whatever pretense, such as red flag, to erode those rights. And I too would have been against Senate Bill 10, which was here in the state Senate, that some of the folks who are candidates supported.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to shake things up a little bit. I'm going to ask each of you a separate question on this one. So we'll start with Mr. Ross. Would you join the U.S. House Freedom Caucus, and why or why not?
Yeah, great question. So the Freedom Caucus in the U.S. House is by invitation. I can't just say I'm joining the House Freedom Caucus. So if given the opportunity, I would absolutely look at that. I know several members personally of the Freedom Caucus. Obviously, many people know Congressman Ratcliffe was not a member of the Freedom Caucus, and yet consistently had one of, if not the, most conservative voting record of every federal representative in the state of Texas, including a better score than Senator Cruz. And so this is, it's not necessarily a prerequisite to being a conservative in terms of whether you're in the Freedom Caucus, but given that opportunity and who's in it next term, I would absolutely consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pruitt, if elected, what single thing do you want to have accomplished by the end of a full 2-year term?
Well, I get asked that a lot, and the single thing that I want to get accomplished in that period of time is to get a majority in the House of Representatives of Republicans so that we don't have to do this. Look, we live in a district that is going to be Republican. What is our job? We're going to be voting no a lot, okay, as long as the Democrats are in control. We need to take our money and our abilities and go out and get other folks elected. Now, what I want to do myself within Congress, I want to be able to be the guy who asks those questions with the Judiciary Committee and those type of things that Congressman Ratcliffe did, because as a trial lawyer, I can guarantee you those are the questions that need to be asked, because by asking those questions, you may not really say it for the answer, but you do it to tell them that, by gosh, we are looking after you.
Thank you. Mr. Ransom, what current member of the U.S. House of Representatives do you most ideologically align with?
Louis Gohmert, or I like Dan Crenshaw, and I think a mix between the two, because I think that Dan Crenshaw appeals to younger voters. He just has an openness about him that I think is important because we have to engage our younger voters. That's a huge point that I would like to make because we have to stop bad-mouthing millennials. They get a bad rep, they get all the negative stereotypes with millennials. You'll never get them to follow you if you badmouth them. You've got to learn to lead them. I lead them in the Army because I lead young people in the military. I see millennials do amazing things every day. And so Dan Crenshaw has a way about engaging millennials, and I think I could capitalize on that. But I think as far as policy is concerned, Louis Gohmert's my guy.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Harris. The U.S. Supreme Court is the final word on questions of constitutionality. True or false, and why?
So false, we have to remember that we have 3 independent branches. And this idea of judicial supremacy is a new thing, a thing that I think we as conservatives need to be very clear, strong, and unrelenting on fighting back against. This has been the strategy of the left since the early 1900s. There were organizations that came up and said, we can't win at the ballot box, let's win in the judicials. And they have taken advantage of our courts for too long, and the legislative branch needs to start addressing and fixing that.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ransom, today we are in a fight for the soul of America. Why should we send you to fight for us? When and where have you shown political courage?
So, political courage. Just last week, I voted against a very good friend of mine on a waste contract for the city of Atlanta, and it broke my heart, but he was not the lowest bidder. It was not the right thing for the citizens. But anyway, so I think political courage. My father was a Cass County Republican chair when we could meet in a phone booth. There were no Republicans. I stood up a Young Republicans group in my high school and worked as a Young Republican. I always have supported every candidate that has come through on the Republican ticket and have put up signs and done that. So I think I've been showing political courage my entire adult life and some of my young adult life. And so, yeah, it's just a way of life. Service is a way of life. And as a soldier, I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I think that that is probably the most important oath to take. And foundationally, that's all my time is up. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll respect that.
And Mr. Pruitt, does the federal government have the authority to step in when local and state authorities fail to protect citizens and their property?
Absolutely, they do, in the sense of if it is a federal building or that kind of thing that we need to protect, yes, the federal government has an issue in doing that. Otherwise, state governments control what happens in those cities. But if you've got a city such as Portland, such as Seattle, in which you've got groups that have come in and taken over parts of that city, and the local officials will do nothing to prevent that, then yes, there's a place for the federal government to prevent anarchy in our cities.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ross, what policies do you support relative to immigration into the United States?
I wish I had a lot more than 1 minute. I had a very lengthy conference call this week with Numbers USA, and that's because immigration, and specifically illegal immigration, is one of my top issues. I have been personally impacted by illegal immigration. My 17-year-old daughter was hit in an intersection last November by someone who was not here legally, had no driver's license, yet they were employed by a commercial company, driving the vehicle, and could have killed my daughter. Unfortunately, that different outcome, death, to 3 of our constituents happened several years ago to the Hacking family. And as a result of that, I helped draft the Voices Act, which would strengthen penalties on coming into the United States illegally. Right now, we do not have sufficient deterrent. And another thing we need to do, illegal immigration coming across the border is only half the problem. Visa overstays are the other half the problem. We have to enforce our existing lawful entry by removing those who overstay.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, state your position on DACA.
DACA is, should be overturned, right? It was done by an executive order, and I support President Trump when he talks about overturning that. But I also think that the proper role for that is for the legislature, for Congress to take that up and fix that issue. Speaking of political courage, immigration as a whole is a mess. We can talk about enforcing the laws that are on the books, but the laws on the books are a big problem. And I think it's time for Congress to have the political courage to go in there and address all parts of immigration, including DACA, that is honestly self-created by policies that we've encouraged, that have given us that result.
Thank you.
Okay, each of you will have a different question. Mr. Ross, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Does the citizenship question belong on the U.S. Census? Why or why not?
Absolutely. I sort of think that's the purpose of the census, to try to figure out who is here and who shouldn't be here. But I fundamentally believe the census must include citizenship. Speaking of citizenship, let me also add on, if I can, with a few seconds left. I believe part of the changes that need to be made to our immigration laws is ending birthright citizenship for people who are in the country illegally. And even on certain visa types, who are here legally on a certain visa type, we should not have birthright citizenship for those categories. That's another part of the issue with immigration that we need to overhaul.
Thank you. Mr. Pruitt, if elected, what single thing do you want to have accomplished by the end of your first 2-year term?
All right, well, that's the same question that Senator Burton asked me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can do another one.
Okay, do that. I can answer it again, but...
No, I can do another. Here's a really good one we haven't asked yet. The national debt is at $27 trillion. If you add the unfunded promises in Social Security, Medicare, and federal pensions, that adds another $106 trillion. That equals $133 trillion, or $864,000 for each taxpayer's share. If you, Mr. Pruitt, could lead the charge to change this, what is the first thing you would do?
Well, it wouldn't be to cut Social Security or Medicare or those type of programs, because those are programs that people have paid into this whole time. It's not an entitlement, it's a right somebody had because they bought that insurance. But to answer your question concerning the debt, as long as the Democrats are in power, we're going to keep having that. Did you get your little card in the mail that is your stimulus money, or you got your check, whatever? Those are credit cards. Who is paying that credit card? We guys are paying that credit card. And as long as they can print money, and the Democrats can print money, we're going to have that type of thing. We need to stop that. We need to stop those programs that are just giving money out to, even within the cities, of which my city takes advantage of. We need to stop a lot of those payments that go into those type of things. People should look at cities and things as a business. And those businesses have to be run like a business and not like a government program that you can just bring any taxpayer money into to fund.
Thank you. Mr. Ransom, when is it appropriate for government to assume ownership of private companies? And are some companies just too big to fail?
I don't think that it's appropriate for the federal government to assume ownership of any private company, and I don't think that anybody or any entity is too big to fail.
Okay, all right. Mr. Harris, would you please state your position on historical monuments as it relates to our current environment?
A few months ago, I thought that the only people that were into destroying monuments was the Taliban. And I've since found out that that's not true. I utterly disagree with that line of thought. I honestly don't even understand it. The fact is, our monuments, a lot of these monuments that they're tearing down were actually put there by Democrats. But that's a side conversation. But no, I would absolutely fight to defend them. I think that, you know, history is ugly, whether it was American history, European history, or African history, but it's history nonetheless. And the idea that somehow if you tear it down, it's going to erase history is just silly and foolish, and that is not what we should be doing. We should be preserving our history and remembering for what it was.
All right, Mr. Harris, keep a hold of that mic.
All right.
Freshman U.S. representatives do not get many opportunities to speak in a meaningful manner in committee or even on the floor, especially if they are in the minority party. How do you plan to make your mark for the people of Congressional District 4?
It's a great question, and one that I've been living for the last 19 months as chief of staff for a freshman member. And there are opportunities to do so. One is to look for something where you can distinguish yourself from the delegation, meaning, or from the conference. We have 198 members of the Republican conference. Go up and be a subject matter expert on something. There are things that need to be tackled. For my case, specifically, we have an elections committee right now with 3 Democrats and 1 Republican. Okay, if you're paying attention, the Democrats' #1 bill, H.R. 1 in the U.S. House of Representatives, is an election reform bill by Nancy Pelosi. One of the top 5 national issues for Democrats is universal mail-in ballots. And we have a committee on elections with 3 Democrats and 1 Republican. Why? Because no Republicans want that committee. So one of the ways I can stand out as a freshman is to go in there and fight that battle on that committee, because I'm an expert on that, and I can stand out and become a voice for that day one.
Thank you. Mr. Ransom, the same question. How do you plan to make your mark for the people of Congressional District 4?
Representative is the key word here. To represent the district means to know the people in the district, to be from the district, to know what the struggle is to be in the district. I think that our district is predominantly rural, and I think that that voice has been muted to a large extent in Washington. So I believe that I'm well equipped to go to Washington and provide a voice for rural Texans, for Northeast Texas, where people are struggling to have high-speed internet, where our infrastructure with our roads is very significant. So I think that I can make an impact simply by being a voice of the rural people from Northeast Texas, because it seems to be a missing entity in that, or missing component of that. As a command sergeant major, I'm in the top 1% of all soldiers who ever joined the military. You have more chance of being a professional football player if you played in high school football than you do of joining the Army and becoming a command sergeant major. Standing out is not an issue with me.
Thank you.
So, in the halls of Congress, there are chances that you have to make your voice known. How do you do that? You do that on the floor of the House, even if they're telling you to sit down, that your time is up. You make sure that they know before you sit down that you've been there and you have said what your constituents want. There's things that we can work on. You know, farm bills, those type of things that come out that really affect the people of this district. Those are things that you can get Democrat support on, because a lot of the United States is rural. They're just wrong in being Democrats, okay? But they're right in the things that they want to happen within those communities. And I believe that there's some things that we can work with them on. But issues that deal with morality and those type of things, we're never going to agree with them on. And so it's a matter of just getting your voice heard, because you guys are going to be the ones that are judging me as to what I am doing about your values from East Texas.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Ross, same question.
Okay, thank you. You know, I like this question because I think it gives me an opportunity to highlight the fact that compared to most freshman members of Congress, I will have a head start, because I have been there with a freshman member of Congress, then a sophomore member of Congress, and then a third term member of Congress. So I have seen, and I have already learned what many freshmen are going to have to learn. I learned it firsthand. And in addition to that, Because I built John Ratcliffe's team here in the 4th District of Texas, I will be able to ensure that on day one, the constituents of this district continue to be represented with excellence, and that we do not have to start over with a completely brand new staff with no experience at the federal level, both in DC and in locally. And one of the things that I would do that would be very different than anyone else in Washington, DC is this. If you want to be a staffer in Congress, at the congressional DC office, for the 4th District, you have to be from this district.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry,
apologize.
we kind of messed that up.
I kind of messed up.
Sorry, we didn't give you a warning, I'm
He
sorry.
got it.
Did you get it in? You got it in, right? Yeah. All right, now Sue's gonna step
I
up.
believe that's the end of the questioning.
That's right.
Thank you so much. And now begins the round where you can use 2 minutes to address an issue of your choice or rebut an issue. And we'll begin with Mr. Harris.
2 minutes. But then you get a 30-second
You
closing.
have 2 minutes to redress anything that was said about a subject of your choice or rebut.
I'm not going to
something.
rebut or redress. I am going to answer a question that Jim was given twice, and I wish I'd have been given.
It was supposed to be for you.
And that is, that's right. Holy Spirit put it there for me, and y'all just didn't hear me. So what would be my goal in my first 2 years? If there's one thing I could do, let me tell you what that is. Over the last 2 years that I've been there, 18 months, 19 months that I've been there, one of the things I learned that I didn't fully appreciate or understand prior to being there is how powerful the Texas delegation is. So my congressman was sworn in January 3rd, 2019. On January 2nd, the day before, which was the 115th Congress, the Texas delegation had 7 chairmen in our delegation. And that was the Congress that was blocking everything Trump was trying to do. That was the Congress that we were still throwing our shoes at the TV, upset at what's going on in D.C. Look no further than the Texas delegation for that. If I could do one thing in my first 2 years, it would be to start to change the culture of our delegation. Because our delegation numerically is the largest in the Republican Conference, but we also, our state, represents the majority of the fundraising from the RNC and the NRCC. So if we can change our delegation, we can literally change the culture of the Republican Conference and start changing that city. So if I was given that question, my answer is that. My goal in the first 2 years, aside from things I do individually, it would be to take the Texas delegation and say, guys, we're Texans first. We're Texans first. Every weekend we fly home to Texas. We wear our boots and we say we're Texans. Let's act like it in Texas. And that's my challenge individually, is to go up there and be able to do that. Between the current freshman class and the incoming freshman class that I asked you to make me a member of, we're going to have a 50% turnover in that delegation. That represents a real opportunity for us to, the Texas members have lunch every Thursday to talk about how good the catered food is. Stop talking about the catered food. Let's talk about how we're going to cut the budget year over year, because the highest ranking Republican on the budget on that appropriations committee is a Texan. And we're not doing that. So I want Texas to lead.
I'm Travis Ransom. I was named after William Barrett Travis from the Alamo, who drew a line in the sand. And he didn't say, hey, I'm drawing this line in the sand, everybody that's with me is on this side of the line, right? No. He compelled people to action. He drew a line in the sand, he walked across it, and he said, we're Texans, we're standing, we're fighting. There's over 300 precincts in Congressional District 4, and yet there are 150 votes, roughly, in Congressional District 4. Democracy does not work. You have to work it. We have a republic form of democracy. You folks are in the driver's seat now. But there are many, many vacancies in our locally elected positions. I'm here to tell you that I can compel people to action because that's leadership. And that's what I'm about, is building a stronger party, relying on the infrastructure of the party. Too many candidates have never relied on the political party as an infrastructure, and they haven't then valued that infrastructure and built it. And that's a concern. As a guy who grew up as a Cass County Republican chair's kid, I saw people working on behalf of the party. You You folks get it. You're in the driver's seat. You're working on behalf of the party. But we need more of you. We need more of you to drive this home. And so I ask you to send me to Washington to be your representative, because I've done the work of the party, volunteered in civic groups, I've done the work of my city, I've served the state government, I've served in the federal government as a command sergeant major. I think I'm a pretty darn good representative of what Northeast Texas has to offer. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Pruitt.
Thank you. So, what do we do after next Saturday? You guys have this awesome responsibility. And you know what's so great about this is? Not one person that is a lobbyist or one person with any money have any effect on this race whatsoever. It's the only time you'll ever see that. So, you guys are the people that we're indebted to. You guys are the people that I'm indebted to when I go to Washington. We will have monthly calls between precinct chairman and county chairman. Tell me what's going on in your precinct, what's going on in your county. And by gosh, we will take that to be our policy, not the lobbyists and those type of things, because we don't need them in this district because of the way this process is. One of the things that's made me so mad, and you know, I'm not going to get a Christmas card from Governor Abbott this time, I can promise you. I sent some of you my paper having to do with masks and how he failed us in trying to please everybody and not pleasing anybody. About how masks using words that are not really words. They are just, you can interpret them as a lawyer any way you want to. But one of the things that really got me was the CARES Act funding. Do you know there's not one city, except the ones in Collin County, that got their CARES Act money? I want to give you an example. Because we are not in a county of over 500,000. All the Democrat counties, they got their money directly from the federal government by the hundreds of millions of dollars. The city of Rockwall, we were supposed to get $2.5 million. But our governor put a rule on it that you can only use 25% of what you actually spent. We only had $40,000 in actual COVID expenses. Therefore, to help our citizens, to help people, to help businesses, all of that, we got $10,000 that we could use. Okay? It's wrong. All that other money is going back to the state, and they can use it. Who knows how they're going to use it?
Mr. Morris.
It's hot.
Don't get me going about that stuff.
Heated it up. Let me take this 2 minutes, it's 2 minutes, right, to touch on something that I really thought might come up tonight but hasn't as of yet, and that's redistricting. We currently have 36 congressional seats in Texas. Next year, after we go through completion of the census, the state legislature is going to have the opportunity to probably add 3 additional seats, so we'll go to 39 in Texas. We're going to have to redraw a lot of the maps across the state. One of those seats is almost certainly going to come in to the DFW Metroplex. And I would think almost certainly in Denton and Collin County. One of the main reasons that I told you earlier while I was running is loyalty to the 4th District of Texas. This is a very historic district. In the past 100 years, there have only been 4 people who represent this district. John Ratcliffe, Ralph Hall, Ray Roberts, and Sam Rayburn. Think about that. 100 years. This district deserves someone from here who cares about it and will fight for it and protect it. We do not need to lose counties from this congressional district in redistricting. I will do everything I can do as a sitting member of Congress and to work with the state reps from across this district to protect our map. We don't need to be redrawn. Even with our growth, if you take 29 million people in Texas, you divide it by 39 seats, that's 750,000. That's almost spot on what we have right now. We don't need to change, and I would encourage you not to be pressured to think that there is a redistricting problem that has to be solved in this district, and that we need to vote in order to protect against that. We do not, but I will fight as hard as I can and work with our state reps to protect us from any threat.
Thank you. Stay standing, Mr. Ross. Take a deep breath.
It's
30
go.
seconds to wrap up.
Okay. Thank you all for being here tonight. Moderators, thank you for being here tonight, the work you put into this. I was a precinct chair in Rockwall County for almost 10 years. I was on the state Republican Executive Committee for 4 years. I've been a lifelong servant, like you have, to the Republican Party of Texas in our communities. I greatly appreciate the opportunity that you have before you, and I know that you're going to get it right. I've been in one of your committees to pick a new replacement at the county level. I know the work that goes into it. I know you'll get it right, and I respect this process. Let me also say, today was a tough day. We said goodbye to one of our fellow candidates, Justice David Bridges. Please continue to keep this family in your prayers.
Thank you. Mr. Pruitt.
Thank you. Let me just carry on to that. You know, Justice Bridges just wasn't our friend. He was a judicial colleague of mine that I've known for a long time, and one of the nicest folks that I guarantee you've ever met. And it's really been tough on ourselves within our county. But I want to tell you that I thank you for what you do. You know, a lot of folks just showed up, all right? Who's been to the conventions? Who has spent decades going through Republican conventions, doing the things that have made our party great?
Thank you. Mr. Ransom.
I'd like to echo the comments regarding Justice Bridges, gentleman of a man, and one of the quotes in his funeral program is Teddy Roosevelt's quote about the man in the arena. So I'd encourage you to read that quote. A couple things I didn't touch on earlier. Redistricting. I'm in Cass County. They cannot move me to Louisiana, Arkansas, or Oklahoma. And therefore, redistricting is pretty good going west. So no changes. Debt, 27 trillion in debt. Pulled our soldiers out of Afghanistan and Syria. We have no strategic objective there. Get out of there.
Mr. Harris.
Thanks, Sue. As I started off by saying, we are at a crossroads in this country, and I think we all agree on that. What I think is we don't have time to send someone that's going to take 2-3 years to get their feet under them. We need to send somebody that can go up there and fight now. And I've got that experience. You say, well, how do we know you're going to fight? Really simple. I have a track record of fighting, as I mentioned a couple. I look forward to meeting with each and every one of you if I haven't. I can tell you about some of the fights I've been in. I also have a track record of winning and producing results. And it's time that we have that in DC today. So thank you all for your time. Thank you all for coming out and listening to all of us.
Thank you very much, candidates.